Chapter 261. The two women giggled along as though they had just heard a hilarious joker. Wilbur let out a huff of exasperation. Aha! Which gang leader is this? The short-haired man said arrogantly. Listen up. Harry Manetra of Flushing Corp. A company worth billions. Mr. Manetra's a well-respected man in Seachertown. Wilbur paused. He had never heard of this guy before. Just then, Farron, Faye, and Elsa were making their way over as they chatted among themselves. The three of them saw Wilbur and crowded over at once. Farron asked curiously, "What's happening here?" Charles hurried to explain, "These people broke into Sea Lake Island and are refusing to leave." Oh, Farron shrugged his shoulders. Elsa and Faye shook their heads as well. Just then, Wilbur said, "This guy says he's from Flushing Corp, some big shot company. Have any of you heard of it?" Elsa shook her head. "Nope. I haven't. I'm rushing off to work. Bye now." She turned to leave right after. Farron shook his head as well. "I have no interest in knowing about some dipshit company. I'm in a hurry to get to work too. Bye." "I haven't heard of it either. I need to get to work too. Bye." Faye smiled, strutting off in her heels. Their words thoroughly angered the five intruders, and they glowered with rage. The truth was that Flushing Corp was hardly anything in comparison to what Faye and Farron were in charge of. Even Elsa was someone that Harry would never deserve to meet. The three of them had honestly never heard of Flushing Corp, and hardly cared about it. The five intruders, however, were about to explode with fury. Harry was especially furious. He had brought his friends here to have a good time and felt terribly humiliated by the gesture. It was important to note that he was rather well respected in his circle. One of the women there with him today was a model that he had just met not long ago but had not been able to get with yet. How was he going to move things along with her if he just walked away after being humiliated like this? Wilbur put his hands out with a chuckle. "I'm sorry. I guess you're not all that well known after all." Wilbur was doing this on purpose to give the guy a hard time for how rude he had just been. "Are you fucking doing this on purpose?" Harry glowered at Wilbur. Wilbur frowned. "You should go before this goes beyond your control. Who the fuck do you think you're trying to intimidate? I could get you fired with just one phone call." To Harry, Wilbur and the rest were only stall working there. Wilbur's expression darkened at the words, "I haven't got time for you today. Get out now." "Who are you telling to get out? Are you trying to get yourself fired?" The short-haired man fumed. One of the women with blonde hair looked at Wilbur in disdain as well. "You're just a staff here, aren't you? How dare you act tough and threaten us like this? We'll leave if you've bought the place. In fact, we'll never come back again." Wilbur was getting annoyed as well. What was wrong with these people? Yet he did not want to get physical with them, as it might make him look bad. He was about to have Charles get someone over here to kick these people out. There were more than 10 people working under Charles. Surely they would be able to get something like this done. But before Wilbur could say a word, a figure ran over from the bridge screaming for help. Chapter 262. Wilbur was at a loss for words. What the hell was going on here? The figure stopped in front of Wilbur, her chest beating as she gasped, "Help me. Someone's trying to kill me. I can't run anymore." Wilbur took a closer look at the figure. Wait, wasn't this the assassin who had tried to kill him by the lake here before? How dare you still show your face here? Wilbur was enraged. What did she take him for? The assassin sighed. "Dude, I had no choice. The assassination failed, and I even had to kill my client. I've been hunted down by my old team for a month now. I can't run anymore. Save me, and I'm all yours." "What the fuck are you talking about? Do I look like I would do something like that?" Wilbur was nothing but infuriated. This woman was really saying anything that came into her head. However, Wilbur could tell that she was indeed tired and weak. She had been full of energy and spirit when she had tried to kill him the last time, highly skilled and agile. At this moment, she was pale in the face, with 2 dark circles hanging under her eyes. What a drastic change. What was she thinking, asking Wilbur for help because she couldn't run anymore? "What makes you think I'd save you?" Wilbur asked curiously. The assassin seemed like she was on her last breath, sitting down on the ground as she shook her head. "I don't know, but I've got nowhere else to go. It's a spur-of-the-moment decision, I guess. You're really something else. Wilbur shook his head. Just then, a blond man appeared on the bridge. He made his way over slowly, hands in his pockets. He glanced at the assassin on the ground, then at Wilbur and the rest before letting out a chuckle. Why aren't you running anymore? I can't. You psycho. The assassin gasped feebly. The blond man lit a cigarette and shook his head. Oh, my dear Purple Rose, you knew what was coming, didn't you? Why did you even bother running in the first place? Because I wanted to. Do you have something to say about that too? The assassin was clearly hanging on by a thread but refused to let up in her words. Just then, Harry let out a cold laugh as he looked at everyone else. Dude, what kind of art is this? Assassinations and cringy code names like Purple Rose. Since when they filmed special shows here? Harry said in disdain. Wilbur looked at him, shaking his head. You guys should really go. This isn't a show. One of the women giggled. Is that so? What is it then? A comedy skit. Her words made the other four intruders burst out laughing as well. Just then, Ryder had set down his briefcase, staring at the blonde man. Wilbur glanced at Purple Rose. He sighed, looking back at the blonde man. What should I call you? Wolf of Venom, the blonde man uttered with a smile. Wilbur frowned. I was asking for your name, not your end name. Wolf of Venom's gaze narrowed. You're the person Purple Rose was supposed to assassinate? That's right. Wolf of Venom let out a laugh, licking his lips. I see. You're an expert too. I'm all right. The thing is, battles are banned in Seachertown now, and so is murder. Get out of here, and I won't give you any trouble, Wilbur replied. Wolf of Venom chuckled, then took 2 steps forward. Is that so? My thing is that anyone the Riverside Blossoms want to kill will have to die. What now then? Well, you could either go by my rules, or I'll kill every one of you from Riverside Blossoms that come for me, Wilbur said coldly. Just then, Harry burst out laughing as he clapped wildly. Dude, this is sick. Who wrote this script, huh? I'd like to meet this genius. Right after that, Ryder opened his briefcase and assembled his super cannon at top speed, then fixed a pistol to his hip as well. Chapter 263. Wilbur looked over. What are you doing? They're outsiders here. Don't scare them. Harry and his friends were regular people, and Wilbur did not want them to know what this place was really hiding. Meanwhile, Harry laughed even harder. He walked up to Ryder, eyeing him challengingly as he stood right in front of the super cannon. Oh my goodness. We've got a whole cannon too. This sure is some high-budget production. Come on, fire us a shot. Let's see if it's real. His friends laughed along as well, as if they were watching a clown show. Wilbur frowned in annoyance. Ryder paid no mind to Harry's jeers, putting away the super cannon as ordered. Harry laughed again. What's the problem? Are you scared you'll be exposed? Wilbur shook his head. Ryder's expression darkened even more. Just then, Wolf of Venom chuckled as he shook his head. That's a pretty cool cannon, but it won't work on me. It'll be enough to take care of this idiot though. You guys don't look like you've killed anyone before. Have you? Wilbur could not take it anymore. What on earth was happening? I've changed my mind. Wilbur glanced at Wolf of Venom, before gesturing at Ryder. Get him. Ryder picked up the weapon he had just put away, aiming it at Wolf of Venom. Powerful spirit energy exploded from Ryder, the pressure emanating off him in waves. Wolf of Venom's expression shifted as he sensed Ryder's spirit energy. Ambience level? He did not expect this guy holding a gun to be an ambience level cultivator. Amidst his shock, he channeled his aura to go against Ryder's spirit energy. That made his entire body glow. The aura is illuminating his figure. It was clear that Wolf of Venom was a peak aura level cultivator. No wonder Purple Rose was no match for him. But aura was a whole level under ambience, and he was no match for Ryder. Wolf of Venom was weighed down in an instant. The barrel of the super cannon was aimed right at him. All at once, the distance between both parties rippled with spirit energy that made it hard for everyone else to breathe. Harry was caught right in the middle of the two men. Despite him not being Ryder's target, The pressure from the spirit energy was more than he could handle. Harry keeled over at last, foaming at the mouth as his eyes rolled backward. He soiled himself at the same time, evident from the foul smell coming from his pants. Charles and the other intruders were also affected by the pressure. They cried out in terror as they stumbled backward, but their legs gave way, and they could only crawl away as much as they could. Just then, Ryder pulled the trigger emotionlessly. A bullet shot out toward Wolf of Venom at top speed, letting out a deafening noise. "No, that's impossible." Wolf of Venom howled, trying to struggle as he channeled all the aura in him. Alas, it was all in vain. He was completely held down by Ryder's spirit energy, and the screw bullet went right through him as his body exploded into countless pieces. Upon taking Wolf of Venom down with just one bullet, Ryder silently put the super cannon away. He dismantled it expertly within seconds, putting it back into his briefcase. Wilbur shook his head at the sight of the fragmented pieces of flesh littering the ground, turning back to the assassin. "What's your name?" "Purple Rose." "Dude, I'm not asking for your code name. Tell me your real name." "Gertrude Quick." Wilbur widened his eyes. He stared at Purple Rose, or rather, Gertrude Quick. After some time, he finally asked, "What were your parents thinking, giving you a name like that?" "My last name's Quick. What's wrong with being called Gertrude?" Gertrude shrugged. Both those names were fine separately, but it was a little strange once put together. Chapter 264. Wilbur stared at a now relieved Gertrude. "You don't think I killed Wolf of Venom because of you, right?" "I know. He was just too cocky," Gertrude said with a smile. "What do you mean by that?" "That guy has always been arrogant as hell just because he thinks he's an amazing cultivator and doesn't respect anyone but our leader. It's a given you were going to take him down for acting like that on your grounds," Gertrude said. Wilbur smiled. "How are you so sure I was going to kill him?" "I wasn't. But as I said, I didn't have anywhere else to run. I just let fate decide," Gertrude said, shrugging her shoulders. Wilbur scoffed. "Leave this place right now, and never let me see you again." "Got it." He then looked around him. Harry was still collapsed on the ground, lying in a pool of his own filth. His friends were shivering in a heap, their faces pale and devoid of any of the cockiness from earlier. They were stricken with disbelief. None of them knew where that powerful, bone-chilling pressure had come from. Everything had happened too fast, and the mystery was terrifying. All those intruders wanted to go home right away and go to bed so they could wake up and tell themselves this had all just been a dream. However, Wilbur said, "I guess you can stay and have your fun if you want. It's not that big of a deal." The two women burst into tears at once, and the men trembled as well. Wilbur scoffed. "You're going to keep your mouth shut about what you saw here. Got it?" The five intruders nodded profusely. "Charles, I'm sorry, you're going to have to clean this place up." Wilbur turned to leave after that with Ryder in tow. Once he was gone, Harry and his friends scrambled to get up and run for their lives. None of them wished to stay there for a second longer. Charles was terrified as well, but did not run as he knew who Wilbur really was. Yet at the sight of the blood and flesh on the ground, he could not help but throw up in disgust. Gertrude called out to him at once, "Let me help you." Wilbur drove with Ryder in the passenger seat, the two of them heading for Mount Orient. The car chugged along steadily, turning and twisting along the way up. Ryder was as emotionless as ever, not asking where they were headed or even what the mission was. Wilbur, out of boredom, turned on some music. Just then, a lady in a tracksuit with a backpack on her shoulders flagged them down. Ryder took one look at her and slowly put a hand on his briefcase. "Dude, what is your problem?" Wilbur glared at Ryder before stopping the car and lowering his window. "Hi, Missy. Want a ride?" The woman looked to be in her 30s. Her skin was smooth and glossy, and she looked like a rich housewife. "Yes, this is my first time climbing here. I didn't know it'd be this far. I'm so tired." The woman smiled. Wilbur returned a smile and said, "Come on in." The woman opened the door to the back seat. "Thanks, by the way." Wilbur smiled and reignited the engine. Ryder's hand was still resting on his briefcase. Chapter 265. The woman was nothing but friendly, chatting merrily from the back. My name's Eileen Fall. What should I call you to? I'm Wilbur. This is Ryder. Wilbur responded. Eileen smiled. It's nice to meet you. What brings you here alone? Wilbur asked. Eileen sighed. Don't start. I've been so bored. Why did you walk instead of driving up? Are you from out of town? I can't drive. Wilbur raised his brows. Were there actually people who could not drive in this day and age? Eileen smiled. I really can't drive. My hands and legs stop listening to me the second I get in the driver's seat. Ah, I see. That's fine. Wilbur replied with a chuckle. The two of them continued making small talk as the car drove on. Around noon, the driving road stopped near the peak and Wilbur turned off the car's engine. There's no driving from here. We can only walk now. Eileen got out of the car. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again. Wilbur waved back. Goodbye. Eileen smiled, turning and walking along a winding road leading further up the mountain. Wilbur and Ryder got out of the car as well, watching as she disappeared from their sight. Ryder gripped his briefcase. There was spirit energy in her. Do you have to scope out every single person you see? I didn't even realize there was spirit energy in her. It's suspicious enough for a woman appearing on the way up a mountain on her own, Ryder said. Wilbur nodded with a smile. You've got a point. But not every person with spirit energy is our enemy. Just being careful. Wilbur glanced at Ryder's emotionless face and sighed. Working with people like this was so boring, and a pain in the neck. He took a few steps up to the edge of a cliff and looked down. The drop from there seemed about 100 meters tall. Wilbur turned around to look at Ryder. You all right there? Perfectly fine, Ryder said. Wilbur wasted no time, leaping right off the cliff. A little over 50 meters downward, he landed against a rock protruding from the side of the cliff and pushed off harder, falling even further down. Ryder leaped off too, but he was holding his alloy dagger. Once he was out of energy, he stabbed the dagger into the cliff, took a breath, then continued falling. It was a good few minutes later when the two of them finally reached the very bottom, and they made their way further into the mountain. Around evening, both men came up to the edge of a canyon. Wilbur stopped in his tracks. Ryder said from behind, Deacon Penn, what's the mission here? You're my backup, Wilbur said. Ryder's gaze fell on a hill across from him. The top of the hill overlooked the canyon perfectly. Wilbur nodded. That's good enough. Go on. And don't come down without my orders. Yes, sir. Ryder turned and ran at top speed, disappearing into the thicket of trees. Wilbur smirked at the side of the canyon. I'm here now. Are you ready? He slowly made his way in after that. The canyon was surrounded by lush mountains, but the canyon itself was devoid of any life. There was a small lake, but the water in it was black and reeking of decay. It was only when Wilbur took a closer look that he realized the liquid in the lake was blood, a congealed mass that had been sitting in there for years. Chapter 266. Wilbur stopped in his tracks, looking at a cave deep into the canyon silently. The moon had just come out then, bathing the peak of the mountain in a faint glow. Two figures appeared above the canyon, one on each side. Wilbur frowned, looking to his left. Sure enough, it was Eileen. On the other side, however, was a foreign-looking man. He was wearing red robes, with what looked like a pair of silver shackles on his wrists. Despite being hundreds of meters away, Wilbur could see them clear as day. The three of them seemed to spot each other at the same time. They paused for a moment before both Eileen and the man in the shackles leaped down into the valley at the same time. Both of them, along with Wilbur, stood in a triangular formation, observing each other from a distance. Wilbur was the first to speak up. To clear up any misunderstandings, should we tell each other who we are and why we're here first? Oh, hi. It didn't take long for us to meet again. Eileen smiled, waving at Wilbur. Wilbur nodded slightly. Eileen Fall. I'm from the Kiwanis Club, here to find out about the Skull Cult, Eileen said at once. The Kiwanis Club? Wilbur frowned. What business do you have with the Skull Cult? Eileen smiled. We might be a non-profit organization, but we've got records. We, too, have some vengeance against bloodism, and any member of theirs who shows up will be our target. I see. How did you know about this place, then? Wilbur asked. Eileen said, The skull cult tried to kill me and exposed this location while doing so. Wilbur's expression darkened. He turned to look at the man in shackles. And you? Greetings, you two. The man smiled in a gentlemanly manner. Cardinal Constantine of the Church of Holy Illuminati, I'm sure you know that any evil being is an enemy of ours. So, how did you know about this place? Eileen asked. Constantine sighed. I think we've been trapped. Just like Miss Fall, I ran into someone from the skull cult as a cultivator. I got this coordinate after taking them down. I'm sure it's the same story for you two, isn't it? Yes. Do tell us, Wilbur. Eileen smiled. Wilbur said, I'm Wilbur Penn from the Department of Paranormal Research and Defense. Yeah, I went through the same thing. I'm afraid we've walked into a trap then. Eileen said, not scared in the slightest. Constantine smiled. That's right. I wonder what the skull cult has in store for us. Wilbur glanced at the cave. The surprise should be in there. Just then, a peal of bone-chilling laughter rang from inside the cave. This was followed by a figure walking out of the cave. She looked like a woman in her 30s, with long red hair falling around her shoulders. Her face was pale, and there were two hollow sockets where her eyes should be. Her torso was bare, and the bottom half of her body was made of what looked like moving blood. The blood wriggled and squirmed as the figure made her way over. This was a woman who did not seem human. Eileen and Constantine stood on both sides of Wilbur, facing the woman together. It really is you, Sulin Onyx, Constantine said. Who? Wilbur asked. Eileen said, Sulin Onyx, the former saint of the Bloodism Church. She once stole the blood embryo from the church and fled back to her home country to form the skull cult. I can't believe she looks like this now. What was she like in the past? Wilbur asked. Eileen said, a true beauty. She won many pageants in her time. Wilbur was surprised as well. So that was how the skull cult came to be. I didn't see that coming. But is the skull cult just her? Wouldn't that kind of give her the short end of the stick here? Wilbur was somehow worrying for Sulin now. Just then, Constantine said, don't underestimate her. The blood embryo is a sacred item in Bloodism and contains an immense amount of power. She's probably usurped a good amount of the blood embryo's energy and grew immensely powerful. Chapter 267. What about her cult members? Surely she's not the only member and founder of the skull cult, right? Wilbur could not understand. Eileen said, I think all her members are in that lake over there. Wilbur glanced at the bloody lake and nodded in realization. This monster had founded a cult and then turned all her cult members into blood. Bloody hell indeed. I don't know what these people were thinking. Joining the skull cult, Wilbur said with a shrug. Let me explain. Sulin let out a strange giggle, moving closer to the three of them as she spoke. They wanted to live forever, just like me. I gave them some hope, and they joined me without a doubt. But these people are just lowlives, far from deserving of being chosen by the blood god. Being a sacrifice was their best fate. Wilbur responded, Is that so? I'm curious as to why you betrayed your Bloodism church and even stole one of their sacred items. Sulin burst out laughing. I had the same goal as all these members of the skull cult when I first joined the Church of Bloodism to live forever. But unlike them, I was chosen by the blood god. He descended and made me a saint, and some other people were jealous. Sulin's voice grew in pitch, turning into a bone-chilling shriek. They were jealous of my pure soul and found every reason to pick on me. So, I stole the blood embryo and went back to my homeland because I knew I was no match for them yet. These people are blacklisted from entering Dasha, so they had no way of getting to me. That was how I had the time to cultivate until I was finally powerful enough. When the blood god descends once again and grants me enough strength, I shall return and kill them all. Wilbur shook his head. How traitorous of you. But I do thank you for telling me all of that. It would have taken me much longer to figure it out on my own. I told you that because you're going to die soon, and a dead man can't tell any secrets. Sulin laughed. Wilbur said, We're fighting you 3-1. I don't think you have the upper hand here. Is that so? Why would I even tell you to come if I didn't think I would win? Why did I bring all three of you here? Because you're all powerful enough. Your flesh, blood, and spirit will make the best sacrificial contribution, Serlin screeched. Wilbur shrugged. Cool. Thanks for the compliment. Welcome your death with an open heart and return to the arms of the blood god, Sea of Blood. As Sulin held the words, a bloody barrier arose around the canyon that formed the Sea of Blood's territory. It was similar to Jeremy's from last time, but much more powerful. Wilbur and the rest almost instantly felt the air around them grow dense as if they were walking in a thick puddle of viscous blood. The pressure was not enough to stop them from moving altogether, but it was definitely enough to slow them down in a battle. Just then, Constantine let out a loud roar as a glowing halo rose from his head. The halo was surrounded by images of little angels flying around it, and the air was filled with a holy prayer. Wilbur nodded his head, impressed by the sight. He did not know just how powerful the Holy Illuminati was, but this alone was enough to let him get a vague grasp of things. Eileen put her backpack down, shouting out loud as well. A fierce wave of spirit energy surged outward, forming a set of spirit armor on Eileen's body with serrated swords on either side of her. The spirit armor was burning brightly with a spirit flame. The overwhelming power broke her free from the restrictions of the Sea of Blood's pressure at once. Wilbur let out a low whistle. Eileen was a sanctuary-level cultivator. He quietly summoned his thunder cleaver, its blade burning brightly with a spirit flame as strands of lightning bolts crackled and fizzled around it.